training. So let's go ahead and get right into it. All right, so today we're going to be going over how our customers at LaunchPeer go from idea to 100K plus in seed funding within 6 months without having to have a product, a network of investors, or being in Silicon Valley. Okay, and even if you are in Silicon Valley, hang in there. We're going to talk a little trash on Silicon Valley. No big deal. No, but we're going to go ahead and get into it. Look, you don't need to have any of those things to raise seed capital. Okay, I think a lot of founders, one of the things that holds them back from raising capital is a mindset thing. They think, oh, well, I don't have a product yet. I don't have a network of investors yet. I'm not in Silicon Valley, so it's not as easy for me to raise capital. And that's true. All of those things are true. But you can still raise funding without having those things. Okay, and we're going to talk about how you can do that today. All right, so here's why you should stick around. Only 3% of startups ever raise funding, while 67% of our customers raise funding, and they do it within 6 months. Okay, that 3% number is lifetime. That's not like ever, that's not within 6 months. That's ever. Only 3%. Some people say 5%, but it never really goes above that number, and that number is actually going down recently. The average startup takes about 14 to 16 months on average to raise capital, but our customers do it within about 4 to 6 months. Okay. And the other reason you should stick around is I am brutally honest to a fault about what it takes to raise funding and why the startup system is kind of broken. Okay, a lot of the stuff that you hear out there about how to raise funding is not really pertinent to most of us who are probably watching this training. Okay, all right. So who this training is for? All right, you're a non-technical founder or a technical founder. That's fine. Most of our customers just happen to be non-technical because they haven't built a product yet. But if you're a technical founder, you can still hang in there. And you're looking to build a tech startup, which is a web or mobile application. You're looking to build a piece of hardware. You're looking to build a small business. That's great. I have a lot of respect for every type of entrepreneur, but the stuff we're going to talk about today is not really meant for for you. All right, if you're tired of the cookie cutter advice out there, which a lot of startup advice is kind of cookie cutter, very high level. A lot of the customers who work with us at LaunchPeer have gone through other accelerator programs in the past, and a lot of the stuff the feedback they tell us is, they kind of talk. They kind of create content for everyone, which means they don't create content for any specific person, which is frustrating, and that's what most startup advice out there is for. All right, if you're tired of seeing other startups getting funded while you sit on the sidelines, we've all seen stories of startups raising millions of dollars, and you're like, how did they get any money? What are they doing that's better than me? And they're not. There's certain things that they're probably doing, and I'm going to talk to you about those today. If you're coachable, I hope you didn't register for a training and you're not coachable. That would be kind of weird. And you're ready to get funded in the next 6 months. The reason I bring that up is because the startup funding landscape changes a lot. It changes really, really quickly. This advice is going to be good now. I don't know what's going to happen 6 months from now. I don't know what's going to happen a year from now, 2 years from now. So if you're that kind of person who's like, I'll start building my startup down the road. I'm not really looking to build a startup right now. Well, then, you should come back 6 months and see what training we're doing then. Okay. All right. So who's this not for? You're not building a web or mobile app. Okay. You're content with the same old strategies that's making it harder. We're going to talk about some stats later about that, but making it harder for startups to raise funding. If you're looking for a get-rich-quick solution, I promise you this is not it. Raising capital takes a lot of work, and though what I'm going to tell you today is going to help you, it's still going to be hard, okay? I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you guys. It's hard to raise funding, but you can do it. All right? If you're not ready to invest in yourself or your startup, this training's not for you either. One of the things that we hear from investors a lot is, hey, why should I invest in them? They haven't even invested anything into their own startup yet. Haven't spent any money, haven't put any time into it, nothing. And I'm not saying you have to work full time or spend tens of thousands of dollars on your startup, but you got to do something. Building a startup isn't free. People who tell you that are lying to you. If you're not all that interested in when or if or how you get funded, then again, this isn't for you. All right, but first, real quick, let's talk about who LaunchPeer is, because most of you guys probably don't even know who we are. Maybe you saw an ad, friend told you about us, or whatever. So let's go real quickly into that. All right, well, I'm Jake. I'm the founder and CEO of LaunchPeer. That's me and my wife and our 2 kids in Charleston, South Carolina. That's where our company's headquartered at. This is our team. Try not to make fun of the Halloween pics up on the top left, although I am very proud of my unicorn costume. I think that's very pertinent for what we do at LaunchPeer. Over the last 4 years, we've helped hundreds of seed stage startups around the world with branding, design, development, and growth hacking, but we've really mostly focused on helping our customers raise funding. It's hard for a startup to pay for branding or development or marketing if they don't have the money to do it. Okay? It's very difficult to do that. So we help our customers with all of those things, but especially raising capital. All right, so this is an example 250K raised in funding. Very proud of that one. This is another one, 100K in funding. Very proud of that one. They're currently building their app right now. This is one. He's actually building his app with us right now. Raised 75K just a couple months ago. All of these startups raise funding without having a product. Now, these look like products, but they're not. Okay? It's not an actual app. These are just designs. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. Okay? All right. Our customers have been featured in Fortune, TechCrunch, Cheddar, Inc. magazine, and a ton of other publications. We actually, just this last year, had a handful of our customers get on the Inc. 500 list, which was freaking awesome. We've been voted a top agency for startups, a top branding agency, and a top mobile app development agency in the U.S. by Clutch, which is great. All right, so that's enough about us. Let's talk about you. That's what you're here for, right? And first, I wanted to start off by giving you guys a couple stories about different founders, just to help put this into perspective for those of you who are still a little unconfident about whether or not you can get funded. All right, so first I want you to meet Dave. All right, so Dave's been a boat captain for 30 years. Never started a company before, never started a startup, doesn't really know a whole lot about the startup world. We actually had to teach him a little bit about how to use Facebook, which is fine, not a big deal, okay? Dave walked into our office with this, just a napkin sketch. Didn't really have a lot of what he wanted. He just knew what problem he wanted to solve, which is fine, okay? He had barely enough for us to understand, but we helped Dave turn his napkin sketch into an amazing startup with this system that we're going to talk about today. And then he raised $250K in seed capital for his startup without a product. He had nothing, no product yet. Okay, and then he raised another $1 million 6 months later. All right, now I want you to meet Christian. Okay, this is Christian and his founding team. Really, really young guys. Okay, straight out of college. I'm pretty sure none of them even held like a full-time job before starting their company. His startup, Monado, came to us with an idea for a financial planning app for millennials. And obviously, they fit pretty close to that demographic. They're probably a little bit younger than that, but still. Now, with our help, they pivoted to a B2B platform that solved the same exact problem, okay, but was a lot more scalable, and it was a lot more appealing to investors and potential partners. And they used that to raise $175K in seed capital for their startup. Okay, no product. Didn't have anything yet. Okay, and then his team got accepted into one of the top fintech mentorship programs in the country. Now, the reason I bring this up is because Dave and Christian are opposite ends of the spectrum. Okay, one, 30 years experience in business, in the problem that he wanted to solve. The other one, straight out of college. Nothing else. No experience doing anything, never started a startup before, didn't have a bunch of rich friends or investors in their network, nothing. Now, my guess is you probably fall somewhere in the middle of these two people, right? Now, my point here is that anyone can raise seed capital. It's not about who is raising it. It's about how you raise that funding. It's about how you do it. All right, now, that being said, there is one thing that's consistent among every one of you who's watching this right now. Okay, a great idea, but no money, usually means no startup. Okay, that's not always the truth, but for the most part, it's very difficult today to build a successful, scalable tech startup without funding. Okay, you can try to bootstrap, but even when you try to bootstrap, at some point, even the most prolific bootstrappers end up raising capital somehow. And if you don't raise capital, you just have that slow burn where you're barely growing your company because you can't work on it full time, because you can't quit your job yet, because you can't hire people, you can't put a lot of money into marketing. Those kind of things happen if you don't raise capital. Okay. Now, if you're an entrepreneur, though, you're probably feeling a little lost or frustrated when it comes to how to raise seed capital. And I'm here to tell you guys that it's not you. That's not your fault. Okay? It's because, honestly, most people, doesn't matter where you look, blogs, podcasts, reading different books. I go to Barnes & Noble all the time. I'm surprised they still exist, even though Amazon's around. But, I see a new business book for startups every week. Okay? But a lot of them don't know anything about raising capital. And even if they do talk about raising funding, they're mostly talking about funding for people who are in Silicon Valley. Okay? Now, I'm going to bet that you probably heard one of these pieces of advice before, right? Go raise money from friends and family. Yeah, I heard that a lot. A lot of our customers do too. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I don't have a bunch of rich family members just ready to give me cash. Okay, they're not sitting on stacks of Benjamins just being like, hey, you know what, Jake? That's a solid idea. Here's $100K for my retirement account. That doesn't happen. So for most people, that just does not happen, all right? Go talk to the investors in your network. Yeah, my network today is full of a bunch of investors, but before that, and it took me 4 years to build that network. Most of you guys watching this, it's not like you have like dozens of investors in your network where you can just go have coffee with them whenever you want. It doesn't work that way. Okay, go try to apply for a business loan or a line of credit somewhere. Yeah, banks don't lend to new businesses. Period. End of story. They barely want to give you a credit card. You think they're going to give you 100K to 500K to build your startup? Probably not. All right? And this is probably how you guys feel. I love this meme. It's great. Now, that advice is probably really frustrating, but there is a different way, and we know because we've made that way work. And we did that because we had to. All right? Remember, I mentioned LaunchPeer only works with early stage startups. I mean early, like idea stage early, where you guys haven't even really done anything yet. Maybe they have an MVP, but most of the time, nothing. They got an idea, and that's it. Now, if capital is harder for them to get, it's probably harder for them to work with us, and we can't have that. I got 20 people I need to keep employed, so we need to help our customers get funded as fast as possible. All right, but let's put this into perspective. Me saying it's hard to raise funding doesn't mean a lot. Okay, I'm just a guy on a webinar talking to you guys. Let's put it in perspective in terms of stats, okay? Did you know only 3% of entrepreneurs are able to raise seed funding? I know I mentioned that figure before, and this figure is not something we made up. It's not our own research. We did a lot of research to find these. And here's a couple articles. These are from 2017. And the reason I bring these up is because this is when it started to trend down. Okay, this is why 2017 is going to be a hell of a tough year for seed stage startups. It's 2019 now. Okay, and it's not getting any better. It's getting worse. All right, it's getting harder to raise seed capital. And that article on the right, the funding lifeblood for new Silicon Valley startups is drying up. Yeah, if it's drying up in Silicon Valley, I can guarantee you it's drying up everywhere else too, and it is. We've seen it over and over and over again. We work with startups all over the world. It's drying up everywhere. All the capital, even though the economy is getting better, a lot of that capital is floating to the top. Series A, Series B, Series C. Look at how big of the rounds some of these startups are raising in funding. Well, that's because more people are buying into those rounds and not buying into the seed rounds, because startups aren't doing the right things at the seed round to differentiate themselves, and that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, so let's say you hustle like crazy, and I know most of you do. You build an awesome pitch deck, you pitch hundreds of investors and spend months chasing funding. Well, all of that effort's probably wasted because only 3 of every 100 founders ever raised seed capital. All those coffee meetings and pitch decks and emails and calls and working 80-hour work weeks and working on the weekends and not spending time with your family, your kids, your friends, whatever, all amounts to $0 in funding. Okay? Now that's because the VC system is set up to work against you. And I don't mean just VCs, I mean angel investors, seed stage investors, just investment in general. Okay? Because venture capital is a game. Now, you need to start looking at it like that. And they, being the investors, don't want to make it easy for you to play it. And the way they keep the game working in their favor is by perpetuating the same advice that you guys have probably heard this stuff before too. Okay, here's what they tell you to do. All right, create a pitch deck, create a business plan, do financial projections and stuff, guesswork basically, right? Go pitch some investors, go pitch some more investors, and then you get lucky or you fail, right? So how do you raise funding when the deck seems to be stacked against you? And I put a little pun in there, pitch deck. I got to keep it light. I do this training a lot. So by doing what we're going to show you in this training, it's helped our customers go from 3%, remember the average startup, only 3% of them raise funding, okay, to 67%. 67% of our customers do it, and they do it within 6 months. We don't measure past 6 months, even though we probably should do that, but a lot of our customers raise funding past 6 months, but within 6 months, 67% of our customers raise funding. Okay? And that number goes up every single month. Okay? So how do our customers have so much success raising funding? Okay, well, here is where we get into the bulk of this training. Okay, it all centers around 3 myths that our customers have overcome and that you have to overcome too, okay, in order to raise seed capital. So let's get into it. All right, myth number 1. Getting funded is about my idea and its potential. No, that's not true. Okay? Your idea is actually secondary to one very simple thing. And when I explain it, it's probably going to sound kind of obvious. Okay? Sales. No, I'm not talking about traction. I'm not talking about your growth curve. I'm not talking about how many users you can acquire, what your customer acquisition cost is. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. I'm talking about your ability to sell your idea to an investor. Okay, startup investing is a sales process where you're selling yourself and your startup to an investor. That's it. That's what startup investment is. That's what the whole investment game is. It's a sales process. Okay, that's probably why you've heard some pretty wild, unprofitable, terrible, stupid, dumb, ignorant startup ideas get funded. Okay, doing a few more verbs there. All right, Silicon Valley invested $120 million in a $400 juicer that works as well as your hands. This is the story of Juicero. Some of you guys have maybe heard of this before, maybe some of you haven't, but it's a pretty crazy story. $120 million. Okay, that's a lot of money for a startup that failed. They hardly had any sales. I think they sold like literally a handful of juicers, and that was it. Okay. Didn't hardly do anything. It was pretty incredible. All right, this is another story. You guys have probably heard of this one before, Theranos. $700 million in funding. $700 million from investors. That's a lot of money. I think I did the math once for one of our other trainings, and I could fund, I can give $100,000 to a startup in every single state, all 52 weeks of the year for a full year. 52 startups a week, 52 weeks of the year, and I still would have money left over. That's nuts. I mean, that's incredible, right? That's a lot of money, okay? Now, it's not because the investors are stupid. It's because the founders did what they needed to do to sell an investor on their idea, okay? I know we want to think that investors were just dumb. They invested in startups that had no product market fit. They invested in startups that didn't have a real product. Theranos was just lying to their investors, and even though some investors threw up red flags, those investors were still investors. They still bought in, not really knowing. That's because they got sold. Okay, an investment is a sales process. Now, you don't have to be a salesperson to get this part right, but you do have to know how to sell. Okay? And that really boils down to doing three things. First, piquing interest. The first step of getting funding is being able to get interest from an investor. And that's more of an art than it is a science. It's not the easiest thing to do. But I'm going to tell you in a little bit how you can do that, and we'll talk about it in myth number 2 a little bit. But most startups don't do that very well. They send a pitch deck and they're like, hey, I'm looking to raise money. That's not good enough. And even after that, once you do get their interest, you have to convince them that you're the right person to do this. Okay, you have to be able to tell a story. You have to know what story you're telling. You have to convince them of the vision, where you're going to be going, what you're going to be doing, how you're going to turn their money into more money. You have to convert them. You have to actually get their money. You have to have all the documentation, all the stuff, all the education that you need, a good investor offer, a good valuation, all of that stuff. And most founders don't do that right. Okay, also, as you saw from those 2 startups, there's plenty of money out there. Plenty. Okay, don't use the excuse that there's no money out there for you. It doesn't matter where you're located. Right? Having a scarcity mindset is not going to help you get funded. You must have the internal confidence to know that there is, and I promise you there is, money out there waiting for you to take it. Okay? All right, so let's go on to myth number 2. Having a pitch deck and business plan that are rock solid is very important to getting funded. No, that's not true. Okay? And for those of you who already started creating your pitch decks and business plans, that's okay. It's not like you don't need one. It's just not that important. So, sorry to break it to you. Hopefully you didn't pay any money to build that. It's actually one of the least important pieces to getting your initial round of funding, and I know. Okay, this wasn't always the case, though, which is why you've probably heard something totally different. Okay, now back in the day, before startups became a thing, investors would see only a handful of pitch decks and business plans every week. Okay. Now today, the average investor sees over 40 pitch decks and business plans every single week. That's a lot. And that's average investors. Seed stage investors get pitched a lot more because there's a lot more people swimming in that market. Now, do you actually think that they're really reading those things? Okay, would you actually read those things? Probably not, right? We're all humans. We can't absorb that much information. So investors do what everyone does when they're overwhelmed with information. They filter it. Okay, now remember, the investment process is a sales process, though. You're selling yourself when you're startup to investor, right? We talked about that earlier. Now, I like to use a lot of analogies during this training just because it makes it easier to kind of wrap your head around some of this stuff. So let's say you walked into a car dealership. Okay, you're thinking about buying a car. And, you walk in, you sit down with the salesperson, and, you tell them what kind of car you want. And what they do is say, okay, great, here. And they hand you one of these. This is like one of those vehicle manuals that you probably have shoved in your glove compartment. These things have everything about the car in it, The tire pressure, how fast it can go, how many gears it has, whatever, all of that stuff. I don't really know a lot about cars, but it has everything. Look how thick it is, right? If they slid those across the table and said, hey, now pick a car that you want. If that's all you got, would you buy the car? No, of course not, right? You'd want to take the car for a test drive. Okay, well, you need to do the same thing for an investor, right? You need to let them take your startup for a test drive. But how do you do that when you don't have the money to build the car yet? Okay, building an app is not the cheapest thing to do. It's relatively expensive. tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to build a full-blown product. Or you have to go beg someone to be your technical co-founder, which is really, really difficult when you're just in the idea stage. Most of the time when I've seen people do that, it's ended horribly. Okay? Now, the way that you do that is by building a prototype. Okay, let's look at this quote real quick from Jason Calacanis. He's like a really prolific angel investor. All right, if you just have an idea, you're really not that special. Okay, everyone has ideas. Don't give yourself too much credit for yours! Exclamation mark. The prototype is worth 1,000 PowerPoint slides. Build one. Okay. That's because the world of apps is changing fast, and it's making it easier to build products faster than you could just a few years ago. So pitch decks don't matter as much anymore. Okay, so let me show you an example of what a prototype is. Okay, this is a prototype. All right, let me see if it's playing. Cool. So that looks like a working app, doesn't it? It's not. These are just designs. Okay? These are designs that our team at LaunchPeer built for this customer who raised $75K, and this is all he raised the money with. Just this. A few screens designed by our team at LaunchPeer. We did the branding, we did the screen designs. It wasn't a fully working app. Okay, but it shows an investor, clearly you can see from the video here, that it shows an investor exactly what he's going to be putting his money into, right? Wouldn't you rather invest in that than just investing in a pitch deck with a bunch of words on it? Yeah. Okay? If you're an angel or pre-seed investor who's very risk averse, and most of them are, okay, and a founder walks in with this, and another, which is basically your pitch deck and business plan, and another founder walks in with this, which one do you think is most likely to get funded? I think we all know the answer to that. Okay, 250K, just a prototype. 100K, just a prototype. 75K, just a prototype. Okay, here's a couple more examples of prototypes that we've built for our customers. See if I can get them all to play. Cool, there we go. These are just prototypes. They're not fully built products yet. Okay? And I know these look expensive, but I'm going to talk to you in a little bit how we can help you do it. You don't have to spend a ton of money to build something like this, but obviously you can see here that gives so much value to an investor. Your branding looks awesome. They know exactly where their money's going to. They know exactly what the product's going to do. It works awesome because our customers, we know because our customers use them all the time. All right, by giving investors something to test drive, it shows how you are all in too. Because anyone can copy and paste together a business plan. You know, I do it all the time for our customers. Like, you don't have to, it's not like the internet doesn't exist. Anyone can go find a business plan template and customize it. Most of you have probably done that. Okay, the same thing with pitch decks. Anyone can put together a pitch deck in 30 minutes. There's a really cool tool we have our customers do that helps them create a pitch deck in like 20 minutes, and it looks awesome. Okay? But having a prototype is such a huge step beyond all that stuff. It shows investors that you are all in too, and it gives you a leg up on the other 40+ startups who are vying for their attention every single week. Okay? But like I said before, it does take a lot of skill and experience to build a great prototype. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. Okay, from the branding to the UI UX design to just knowing what the flow should be like of users going through your application. What kind of stylistic approach you should take based on your customer demographic, who your customer demographic is, what technology you're going to have to use to build it, like because you can't just build a design without knowing the technology, all of that stuff. And normally that stuff costs you tens of thousands of dollars. Okay, but in a minute, I'll talk to you about how we can do that for you for a fraction of that cost. Okay, it doesn't cost tens of thousands of dollars, I promise you. All right, so myth number 3. The more I hustle and consume content, like books, podcasts, blogs, the better prepared I'll be to get funded. Yeah, that's not true either. Okay, I'm going to get really real with you guys here, and I've already kind of gotten real with you guys before. Most founders don't know what the heck they're doing in the investment process. They just don't. Okay, and that's not their fault. All right, there's 2 reasons for this, 2 primary reasons. First, there's an overload of startup information online. You guys have probably all seen this. 257 million search results for how to build a startup. 196 million search results for how to launch a startup. 139 million search results for how to grow a startup. And your Twitter feed's inundated with startup advice. Your podcast feed's inundated with startup advice. The bookstore's inundated with startup advice. Everywhere you go, there's different people telling you different things. Okay? And more content to, quote, help startups is getting published every day. We all see it. Well, with that much information online, it's really impossible to know what the right step-by-step path you should do to go from an idea to a funded startup. Okay? And if that information was really that helpful, why do over 90% of startups still fail? And only 3% of startups ever raise funding? That doesn't make sense to me. Okay? And that's when I started realizing, like, maybe this content's not right for our customers, maybe it's not right for us. Because if that content was that helpful, why wouldn't those numbers go down? Okay, more and more of that content's being published every single day. But those numbers, the 90% failure rate and the 3% success rate of getting funded, aren't getting better. They're getting worse. That doesn't make any sense. Okay? All right, second, even with all this information, it's probably not made for people like you and me. Okay, most of the advice that you find online is for or by Silicon Valley type entrepreneurs. Okay, which when I say that, I mean they have quick access to capital, okay, which is readily available in Silicon Valley. The average seed round in Silicon Valley is like $7 to $10 million now. The average seed round for startups outside of Silicon Valley is like 500K, like around 500K. It's just a different world out there. Okay, the top mentors live right next door. 100% true in Silicon Valley. Okay, they've built a successful startup before, or they have a best friend who has, or they have their friends who can work for them for free or whatever. Most of us don't have that luxury. They can live rent-free in their parents' basement while they build their startup. Okay, most of our customers are working full-time jobs. They're trying to raise funding so they can work on their startup full-time. Okay, now my guess is that's probably not you, and that's not our typical customer at LaunchPeer either. Now at LaunchPeer, we've worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs who didn't have any of that stuff. Okay, but they still built successful startups and they got them funded because they learned all the ins and outs of the funding process. Okay, things like how to create a good investor offer. That's not the easiest thing to do if you've never done it before. What a term sheet is. How to put a valuation on your startup that's not ridiculous to investors. How to find and reach out to the right investors and what to say to them when you reach out to them to make yourself stand out. The terms that you need to know to not sound like an idiot in an investor meeting. All of this stuff. I've been in a lot of investor meetings. I can promise you, most founders are not all that educated on the investment process, and investors can smell that. Okay? They've been doing this long enough to know that. All right, so look at it this way. We already know that investors get pitched about 40 plus times every week. Okay? Now, if you can get past that filter and get a meeting with the investor, but they know that you don't really know what you're doing, then they probably won't fund you. Okay? And there's a reason for that. That's because investors are looking for reasons not to give you money. Now, going into those conversations with them without being educated about the process will hurt your chances to get that money from them. Okay, now, but you might be thinking, well, that doesn't make any sense. Don't investors want really good deals? And I understand where you're coming from when you think that. Okay, they do. They really do want good deals, but there's plenty of you out there. There's plenty of startups out there. They get pitched so many times a week, they have to look for reasons not to give you money. Okay, most entrepreneurs are just not prepared for the funding process, so investors just don't want to waste their time. Okay. Because most founders are just throwing spaghetti against the wall, hoping something sticks. How many of you have gotten off of work one day, got on your computer, pulled it up, and just started doing stuff? Just started working hard. Yeah? That's what most founders are doing. You're not waking up saying, I know exactly what to do today, I know exactly what to do tomorrow, I know exactly what I need to learn. We don't have that luxury for most founders, but our customers do. All right, they'll go create a pitch deck, they'll create a business plan, maybe find a developer or designer to do something. But they're not really following a step-by-step process to ensure that they can find and impress the right investors and get to that next step. Okay, and here's another analogy, okay? Imagine baking a cake. It is a show on Netflix, if you guys have seen it. It's called, what's the name of it? Nailed It. Okay, Nailed It. Well, what happens during that show is a bunch of amateur chefs, I guess you can call them. They try to make that cake on the left, and they get a set of instructional recipes, and they're trying to make that cake. Well, usually it turns out like the cake on the right, and that's usually the face that the guy has at the end of it. But what's happening here is that they have the recipe, but they're using the wrong amount of ingredients at the right time. Okay, you can have a recipe and you can follow it step by step, but if you use the wrong amount of ingredients to do it, even though you're following it in the exact order, the cake's not going to turn out right. And the opposite is true too. If you're using the right ingredients, but you're doing it out of order, out of sequence, then the cake's not going to turn out right. And it's the same way with building a startup. Okay, you have to be doing the right things at the right time, and the right amount of effort needs to be going in at the right time. And the people who are on the show, it's not like they're not working hard. They're working their butts off. They're sweating. They are hustling, just like a lot of you are. But it doesn't matter, because most of the time the cake's going to turn out like the one on the right. Okay, you need to be following a system and roadmap in order to ensure you're doing the right things at the right time. All right, so let's sum it up real quick before we get into it, and I'll talk to you guys about something special that we have for you. All right. Myth number 1, getting funded is about my idea and its potential. No, it's about your ability to do sales. Not really. If you want funding, you need to have a prototype. Okay, the more I consume, the better prepared I'll be. No, that content is not made for people like you and me. okay? All right, having a system to getting funding for your startup is possible, and we help our customers at LaunchPeer build and implement that system every single day. And you need to have a system, guys. I'm telling you, just doing stuff, just working hard is not going to work. Okay, this is like what our customers have done. Mark, okay, the prototype the team at LaunchPeer built for us is beyond anything we could have imagined. He raised $75K for his prototype, okay, or with his prototype. Lauren, skeptical the team at LaunchPeer could build such a complicated problem. She raised $100K in funding. David, currently he's raised $30K. He's on his way to try to raise $50K. He was a professional baseball player before coming and working with us. Okay, this is Colin. He's on his way. I think he actually just finished and is building his product right now. Raised his round of funding. Okay, the more and more of our customers are getting funded all the time. Okay, there's nothing special about any of these people. I mean, they're special to me because they're our customers, but there's nothing really like special about them individually. Okay, they're just normal people. But the only difference between them and the 97% of entrepreneurs who never get funded is two things. Okay, one, they're using a system to get funded, and two, they have the support of people who've been there before. They have the right people around them at the right times to help them make it happen. Okay, now you have an important decision to make. All right, you can be the guy on the left or get the handshake deal on the right. All right, so the old path, reading content that's not made for you. Okay, scraping by and hoping you're doing the right things to get your startup off the ground. Okay, begging anyone who will listen to join your team and work for free. That's not a fun thing to do. Agonizing over the fact that your idea is just sitting there and not doing anything about it. Like, you'd be surprised. A lot of people that I talk to on the phone, when I ask them, well, how long have you been working on your idea? They're like, a year or 2 years. I'm like, well, what have you done? Like, why have you been waiting? It's just like, I just didn't know what to do next. Like, that's not the right way to look at it. If you want to do something, do it. Let's go. Let's get it done. Okay. And doing what other startups are doing and failing at, because only 3% of them get funded. Okay. Or a new path, an exact process and system that you can follow step by step. Okay, you're able to wake up and say, yes, I know exactly what I'm doing today. I know exactly what to be working on, and I have the support of people to help me do it. Okay, an exact process to get investor introductions and raise 100K plus in early stage funding. Okay, seed funding. And knowing that you have a 22x higher chance of getting funded than other startups who are not doing this. Okay, you can be on that new path too. You just need the right system and surround yourself with the right people who've done it before. Okay, so if you want, and this is where I'm going to talk to you guys about how we work with our customers. So if you want, stick around. If not, that's cool too. All right, if you want a 22 extra chances of raising funding and do it within 6 months, then I'm going to talk to you about something that we can offer for you. But again, there's no pressure to take it. If you want to hop off now, that's totally fine. All right, but it's my job as the founder of my company to tell you about what we do. Okay, and it's your job to take the opportunity or not take it. Okay? So enrollment into our Idea to Funded program is currently open. Okay, and we're looking for a handful of startups we can help get funded in the next 6 months. Okay, let me talk a little bit about it. Okay, over the next 5 days, we've set aside some time to talk to you and see if you'd be a good fit for I2F. Okay, we'll talk for about 45 minutes or so, and really, the whole goal of that call is to help give you clarity on where you're at right now on your startup journey, and talk to you about how you can use some of the systems that we use at LaunchPeer to accelerate your chances of getting funded or building a successful startup or reaching whatever goal it is that you have. Okay, and if we find that you're a good fit and you want to build this out together one-on-one, and most importantly, we are positive that we can help you reach that goal of getting funded within the next 6 months, then we'll invite you to join I2F. Okay, but we are very particular about who we work with because we need to make sure our success rate keeps going up and doesn't go down. All right, and I'll talk to you in a minute about like how we decide who we invite to the program and who we don't. And we're also going to have a Q&A, so if you want to hang around and ask some questions, you can. Okay? But there's zero pressure. If we give you an invitation after that call or during that call to join I2F, there's no pressure to take it. But we are looking for startups right now to help get funded. And so if you're one of those, then we'll give you an invitation. Okay? All right, so here's how the Idea to Funded program works real quick. All right, so first, we'll do an idea audit. Okay, we're going to dig really deep into your idea. All right, we're going to make sure that you have a good understanding of who your avatar is, how big your market is. Make sure that you have a segment of that market picked out to market to in the beginning. Okay, making sure that you have a validated idea. Okay, and you're going to work with our team to build out your landing page and do some branding and make sure that your stuff just looks really legit, like those other stuff that you saw earlier. Okay, and then we're going to get into the prototype. And our design team is actually going to build the prototype for you. I mean, it's going to be with you, but our designers are going to go in there, that we're going to design your brand, your logo. We're going to design all those screens. We're going to map all the screens out that we need to have. We're going to document the technical requirements of your product and make sure that we know, because most of our customers, when they raise funding, they want to start development. Well, the prototype is a very integral piece of doing that, because you can just hand that to our developers or other developers or a development team somewhere and say, hey, I have all the technical requirements and I have all the designs and everything done. Let's go ahead and start building the product now. Okay, then once that's done, we're going to move on to prep. Okay, and we're going to make sure that all the legal and accounting stuff, if you join I2F, is all taken care of. Incorporation, accounting, we have all that stuff done in-house, and we're going to set all of that stuff up for you. We're also going to work on building your pitch deck and your business plan, and we're going to do some pitch practice so you know exactly what to say to an investor, how to say it, really, most importantly, what not to say. I mean, you'd be surprised at how many founders don't know what not to say during a pitch, and all of that stuff that goes into it. Okay, we're going to make sure you're 100% ready to sit down in front of an investor. We're also going to put a valuation on your startup. We're going to determine how much money you need to raise, typically for about 12 to 16 months worth of runway. Runway basically just means like, how much funding do you need in order to not make any revenue and still be in business for 12 to 16 months? Okay, so we're going to make sure you're raising enough money to have that. Okay, and then also, once that step is over, we're going to do outreach. And this works two ways. One, we're going to be doing outreach on your behalf to our own network of investors. Okay, because the investors we work with, they know the process we take our startups through. And they're much more likely to have a conversation with the startups we work with because they know at this point, they're ready. Okay, this isn't just some guy sending them a pitch deck. This is somebody who's gone through all of these steps and is ready to raise funding. While we're doing that, we are also going to be guiding you through the process of finding and doing outreach to investors who we don't know and you don't know. Because there's a ton of investors out there. You just have to know how to find them. Okay? And the whole goal of this is to help you raise $100K to $500K in funding. All right, so in short, within about 8 weeks, you'd have a fully validated idea, a beautifully designed brand and prototype, all the materials that you need to get funded, including a corporation and accounting, all of that stuff, and a strategy to get meetings with investors and access to our network of investors. Okay, throughout that, you'd have our teams help raising $100K plus within 6 months. All right. Now, I'm sure you're probably wondering how much I2F costs. I'd probably be wondering the same thing too. So let's get into it, and then we'll go into the Q&A. All right, so to hire a company to build only your prototype typically costs about 15 to 50K. All right, I mean, and that's for a good-looking prototype. You can get a crappy-looking prototype somewhere, but you know, do you really think a crappy-looking prototype's gonna help you get funded? Probably not. You saw the examples that we showed you. Those are really good-looking prototypes, and those have gotten funded. So I can say they look good because that's the whole goal. All right, to get the mentorship and guidance and coaching and education and all that stuff that you get working with us, it would typically cost you about 5 to 10% equity. Okay, a normal fee someone charges to just help you get funded, not do any of that other stuff we talked about, is usually going to cost you about 10 to 15% of the funding you raise. Okay, and that's a lot of money to have to give up to someone just to help you make an introduction to an investor. All right, now doing all this stuff yourself and cobbling it together, you have a 3% chance of getting funded, and it usually takes you about 14 to 16 months to do it. But if you decided to work with us and join I2F, and we invited you to join I2F, the investment would be not 20 to 50K, okay, which is what it would cost to get a designer or a design agency to do it. It wouldn't cost you 10 to 15% equity or 5 to 10% equity to do it, because we don't take equity from our customers. Okay, we just have an internal belief that this is just not the right thing to do, and cluttering up your cap table this early on is not a very smart move. We could talk about that later. All right, it's $5,500. That's it. Okay, I know it sounds inexpensive, and I'll tell you why in a second. Why we're able to do all of this stuff for just $5,500. Okay, now we're able to do this for so much less than others because we're looking at the startups that we work with as long-term investments, which is why we're picky about who we work with. Okay, you won't find any information about I2F on our website because we force people to go through this training or other trainings like it to be able to schedule a call with our team. We want to make sure that people are serious about doing this. Okay, we're looking at you as a long-term investment. Over 90% of our customers, once they raise funding, they end up hiring our team of developers here at LaunchPeer because we have designers, developers, marketing people here at LaunchPeer on our team. Okay, and over 90% of our customers, once they get funded, they end up hiring us to build their app. And typical app development projects cost anywhere from $25,000 to $150,000, $200,000, $300,000. I mean, it just depends on what you're building. Okay, and over 90% of our customers end up hiring us. I mean, if we're going to help you get the check, like the chances are, unless you're thinking about hiring your own people, which is totally fine, there's no obligation to work with us. But most of our customers end up falling in love with us, and they want to hire us for other work after they raise funding. So we're looking at you as a long-term investment. Okay, joining I2F will help your startup get funded, but there are some ground rules. Okay, so listen up to this. First, you must be building a web or mobile app startup. Okay, this system works best for tech startups. All right, if you're building a piece of hardware or you're building a cannabis business, unless it's like a tech side of it, that's fine. If you're building a small business, this just isn't for you. Okay, and that's fine. There's other places you can go. Maybe these tips will help you. All right, 2, you must be willing to work hard and sacrifice for your startup. Again, this is not a get-rich-quick solution. Now, the time commitment in the program, I'm not going to make it where you have to work 10 hours a day on the program. Most of our customers who are going through the program are spending about 1 to 2 hours a day on average while they're going through the program, especially during that first 8 weeks. After the first 8 weeks, the amount of workload gets a little bit lighter because that's the outreach time period. But before that, an hour or two a night, it's a lot easier to only have to work on your startup for a couple hours a day on average when you know exactly what you're supposed to be doing. The reason most people work 80 hours a week, it's because they don't know what they're supposed to be working on. So, all right, and you must be coachable. If you think you already know it all, if you're going to hop on the phone with us for a strategy session and say, I don't need any of this stuff. I know what I'm doing. I can do it all by myself. I just need you to do this one thing for me. Don't schedule a call. Okay? We don't want to work with people like that. All right, so if you want to schedule a call, you can claim your free strategy session at launchpeer.com/I2F. Okay, if you think the I2F program is a good fit for you and you want to talk to us more about it and get a free strategy session with our team, then just go to that URL and schedule a call with our team. Okay, we're not going to hard sell you. We don't need to hard sell people. There's a lot of people on this training right now. People go through this training all the time, but we're very selective about who we work with. Okay, at the very least, we'll give you some really good advice on how to build your startup and how to get funded. And hopefully, if you're a good fit and you feel like it could help you, then we'll invite you to join I2F. Okay, so now it's time for Q&A, so let's go ahead and get into some of your guys' questions. All right, and guys, post questions if you have them. A couple people already posted questions. And if we didn't get to your question, I don't want to spend a ton of time on Q&A. Just go ahead and post your question, and one of the people on our team will shoot you an email back. Or schedule a call, and you can just talk to us. All right, so Joe says, if we work together, is it remote or in person? And what's the time commitment? So hopefully I answered the time commitment question. It's about 1 to 2 hours a day on average. In terms of whether it's remote or in person, it's totally remote. Okay, it's not an in-person program. You don't have to travel to Charleston, South Carolina. One of the things I don't like about most accelerators and incubators is that you have to show up every day. Okay, and most people can't do that. Like, you have jobs, you have families, you have people to support. Like, you have you to support. You have to pay bills. You can't just drop everything and go to an accelerator for 3 months. I mean, that's just for most people, that's really kind of impossible. Okay, so it's fully remote. All right, so where is your team located? So we're in Charleston, South Carolina. Everyone on our team is in Charleston, South Carolina. We don't outsource anything. All of our team members are here in our office in Charleston. Okay? All right, Paxton says, how many startups do you work with at any given time? So it just depends. I mean, this is a very one-on-one program. This isn't like a bunch of online coursework where you're going to come and like that's all you're going to do is like we enroll you in this online coursework and we say good luck. Like, you're going to get to know our entire team on a first-name basis. You're going to get to know our designers, get to know our developers, get to know our product managers, get to know our marketing team, get to know me. Like, I'm going to be coaching you guys throughout the whole program. We have 20 people. We can't support having hundreds of startups join this program. And again, if this was the only thing we were making money on, then we, one, probably charge more for it. And two, we would probably accept as many startups as we possibly could. But we're hoping that most of you will get funded, and most of our customers do. And then most of our customers choose us to build their product. Okay, so we don't work with enough startups to where we can't give you one-on-one and personal attention. All right, so Chris says, how is this different from an accelerator or incubator program? Okay, that's a good question. So accelerators and incubators, and we've had some I2F customers who joined the program from big name incubators and accelerators. Like we have a couple people who are in it from Founders Institute, a couple people who are in it who went through 500 startups, a couple people who went to it after going through Techstars. The feedback I normally get from those people, because I ask them pretty directly, like, why are you joining this when you already went through another program? And they say, the stuff I got there was great. I got to meet a lot of good people, but that's really mostly all I got. because those programs aren't designed to give you one-on-one attention or to do work with you or for you. They're not going to sit there and build your landing page with you. They're not going to sit there and help you figure out how to get traction individually. They're not going to sit there and have their design team, which they don't usually have one, build your prototype for you. Okay, they're not going to go out and like proactively help you reach out to investors. They'll bring mentors in, and they'll have mentors come and do talks and all of that other stuff, and that's great. I think that's really valuable. But this program is different because, one, it's a very specific goal. Okay, it's getting 100 to 500K in funding, and two, it's different because we're doing work with and for you. Okay, we're not just providing mentorship or advice. We're like doing work with and for you throughout the whole time the program's going on. And that doesn't mean you're not going to get community aspects with it. Like, we have a community here with I2F, and all the students get to know each other and what everybody's working on, and that's awesome, and it's really valuable for everybody. But we're just a little bit more than that. Okay, the other thing is we don't take any equity from you. Okay, and the reason we charge for I2F is because we're doing work with and for you. Those accelerators and incubators, they can wait years because they're able to accept more people because they're not doing work with and for the teams that are in there. Okay, they might sit down with you maybe for a one-on-one every once in a while, but it's not a regular occurrence. And so we need to get paid for like the work our designers are doing and all that other stuff. And trust me, it's 100% worth it. I mean, you saw the prototypes. Just that alone is worth it, right? All right. Rochelle, do you take equity from any of the startups you work with? No. Next question. No, I have a policy of not taking equity from startups early on because I feel like you should use your equity for other stuff. Okay, advisors, mentors, co-founders, potential partners, all of that other stuff. Investors, obviously, investors. And to muddy up your cap table with people like that early on, like just a company who's helping you do this, like it doesn't make sense. And the reason we charge for this too is because we need to be able to tell the investors that we end up talking to, and you will talk to investors, that you have invested in yourself and you've invested in your startup. Okay, how many people would you want to invest in if they asked you, let's say they asked you for money. Okay, let's use this to really down the home example. Let's say that you had a friend and was like, hey, I'm really hurting right now. I need $100 to buy, to pay my electric bill, whatever, I don't know. And you say, cool, like, yeah, I can give you that. And then you find out after the fact that they had spent a bunch of money on other stuff, and hadn't invested in any money into like making their situation better. Wouldn't that be frustrating for you? Well, it's the same thing with investors too. They want to know that you've invested in yourself, that you've invested in your own company. And by making you pay for this program, it makes sure that you're committed to it. We need to make sure you're committed. And two, it makes sure that we can tell investors that, yeah, this guy's all in. Like, this isn't just some side thing that he's working on. He's serious about doing this, or she is serious about doing this. Like, they're going to do this. Okay. Lucas says, how exactly do you define a prototype? Well, I'm able to use it to get users. So a prototype is, and if you schedule a strategy session with us, we send you a couple examples so you can check them out. But basically, our design team creates all the designs of your application the way that your final app will look, like once it gets built by a developer. But they're just designs, and we make them interactive. So like if I'm looking at the login screen, if I click on login, it takes me to the home page. If I'm on the home page and I click on my profile picture, it takes me to the profile screen. There's no code in it. It's not like a working app. But you can click around and like you can get a really good idea of how the app will look and work once it's built. Hey, and a lot of our customers do use this to get users. What they do is they use the screenshots and they use the prototype to put on their landing page, and they get people to sign up for their pre-launch email list, or they get people to sign up for the product once it gets released, stuff like that. They also use it to get feedback during the prototype process. We'll finish the prototype the first round. They'll go and show it to some potential customers or people they think might like it. They'll gather some feedback. They'll give it to our design team, and then our design team will make changes based on what that feedback was. Okay. So that's a pretty normal process. All right. Josiah says, do you actually build the prototype for me? Is that part of the cost of the program? Yeah, we design it for you. The prototype is all completely done for you. Now it's done. I say it's done with you because you're going to be involved in that process, but our designers are going to be the ones designing the prototype. All right, so Kelly says, what if I already have an app being built? Can you still help me? Yes, a ton of our I2F students are in that spot where they started building an MVP or an initial version of their app. That's fine. Okay, what we'll do is if you're building an initial version of your app, that's probably what it is. It's an initial version. It probably doesn't look and feel the way that you would ideally want to make it look and feel. And you need to have a prototype that looks and feels the way that you want it to look and feel, because when you go to an investor, they're investing in what you will be, not what you are right now. Okay, so if you're building an app right now, like an MVP or something, you're going to work with our design team to design what your app will be in the future, because that's probably what you're going to be raising money for. Okay, and that's actually a good thing to do. Okay, I'm not saying that if you have a product built already, that this program won't be valuable for you. It'll be very valuable for you. If you're trying to raise funding and you're building a tech startup, you're going to get a lot out of this program. Okay? All right, so Chris has another question. Is working with you a one-on-one thing or a group thing? It's a one-on-one thing. I mean, there's some group elements to it. Like we do have some coursework. We have a community. There's some group elements to it, but most of this is one-on-one. Like every startup is different. The ideal customer demographic is different. The prototype is going to look different. The branding is going to be different. The investors that you need to do outreach to is going to be different. We can't have this a group program. Okay, it's not. It's a one-on-one program with some group elements involved in it. Okay, so Sarah says, what do I need to have done before having a call with you or working with you? Nothing. I mean, I talked to you guys about Dave earlier. Hold on, I'm going to take a drink for a second. I talked to you guys about Dave earlier. He walked in with the napkin sketch. There's a couple of things that you guys need to have. Okay, one, you need to want this. Okay, you need to really want it. This can't be just something you're like, oh, this is a side gig. You have to want this. Like, you have to really want to build a successful startup. That's one. Two, you have to know what problem you're trying to solve. You don't have to know what the solution is. Okay, when Dave walked in, he said, I don't understand why there's Uber for cars, but there's nothing for boating. Okay. Or at least nothing widespread for boating. He didn't know what his app was going to do. He didn't know what features it was going to have. He was just frustrated by a problem that he wanted to solve. Okay, so those are the two big things that you need to have before scheduling a call. That's it. Okay, you don't need to really have anything else. You need to convince us of those two things. That you're ready to work hard, that you're serious about this, and that you have a problem that you feel is worth solving and that you can solve it. Like, you're the right person to solve it. That's it. You don't need anything else. All right, Michael says, is there a payment plan to join? It depends. Okay, it depends on who you are, what you're working on. Sometimes we try to work it out, but we're not going to split the payments up into 6 payments. We can't do that. Okay, but we can try to work with you in your situation and try to make something work. If you're not sure if you can afford it, or you're questioning it, you're just not sure, then just schedule a call with our team and just let's talk about it. Okay? All right, Joel says, how exactly do you help us get funded? Do you find investors for us or what? So it works two ways. We have investors in our network already. Okay, so we'll tap into that network. And we also help you go do outreach to investors and find investors. Okay, you can't just do a search online and say, find me investors. It doesn't really work that way. Okay, you have to be very strategic about how you're finding investors. Most founders make the mistake of doing quantity over quality. They'll go do outreach to hundreds or thousands of investors without being specific about who they're reaching out to and what they're saying to those individual investors. You can't send information out to thousands of investors and get any response back. It doesn't work that way. Okay? You have to be very strategic about who you're doing outreach to and make sure that they're the right people. So we help you with that kind of stuff. All right, so this is the last question. I got to kind of move on from the questions. I don't want you guys to be here forever. If you have any other questions, then go ahead and post them, and one of the team members will go back to you. Okay? Kristen says, are there reasons you don't work with a startup? Industry, team size, etc. Not really. I mean, we have solo founders. We have teams of 2. We have teams of 3. I think we maybe have 1 team of 4. Anything bigger than that, we haven't really worked on it with a startup that's bigger than that, more than that co-founders-wise. But it doesn't mean we're opposed to it. In terms of industry, I mean, like I said before, as long as you're building a web or mobile app startup, because if you're not, the prototype piece is just not going to be very valuable, right? We can't build a prototype of a local coffee shop. That wouldn't work. So as long as you're building a web or mobile app startup, then we could help you. So there's not really a reason we don't work with a startup. Most of the reason is that what I said before when Sarah asked her questions, which is what do you need to have before the call? It's usually we don't believe that you want it enough. We don't believe you're serious about it, or we don't believe that you are able to solve the problem, or it's a problem we're solving. Okay, but very few times have we turned someone down if they didn't meet those criteria. And even with the problem solution fit thing, that's okay. On the call, we'll talk to you about it, and usually we help our customers brainstorm stuff on the call of like, okay, that's a cool problem. How about we think about solving it like this, or like this, or like this, or like this. All of our team has worked with hundreds of startups. Okay, we're all entrepreneurs first, and designers, developers, marketing people second. And so we're gonna be. One of our customers said, like, working with launchpeers is like having the right co-founder at the right time. And I think that's a great quote, and I use that all the time. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. All right, so what doing all this on your own could cost you? Okay, the average startup takes 16 to 18 months. I think I said 14 to 16. It's about that to raise a round of funding. But our customers do it within 6 months on average. Okay, only 3% of startups are able to raise a round of funding, while our customers raise funding within 6 months at a 67% success rate. And that number's higher if we count after 6 months. Okay, a lot of our customers. One of the other questions I usually get is like, well, what about the other 33%? Why don't they raise funding? Usually it's two things. One is life happens, and this happens to everybody. They get pregnant, their wife gets pregnant, they get a promotion, they have to move across the country, whatever. That stuff happens, and so it takes them a little bit longer to raise funding. A bigger portion of that 33%, it's because it just takes them a little bit longer. Okay, maybe they're working in a niche market where investors don't really understand that industry very well. So they have to be much more specific about the investor they go after. So it just takes them a little bit longer to raise funding. And we'll tell you that. We'll be upfront with you on the call. If we feel like it might take a little bit longer, we'll tell you that. All right, but that number, that 67% number, keeps going up. Okay, we keep getting better at what we do. All right, and doing this on your own could probably waste you months of time and money and resources doing the wrong things at the wrong times. The first thing I hear from most people after the call and they sign up for I2F is, I wish I had found out about you guys 2 years ago. I wouldn't have wasted tens of thousands of dollars building an app nobody cares about. I wouldn't have wasted tons of time and money and resources on stuff that didn't work. Okay, I wish I would have found you guys sooner. Okay, so don't be that person. All right, after working with hundreds of startups, I promise you guys that the key factor between a successful and unsuccessful startup is how fast you can get and keep momentum. Okay, but that momentum starts with having the right team around you and the funding that you need to build a successful startup. But you can't get momentum without taking action. All right, so if you think the I2F program is right for you and you're ready to work hard, you're ready to get funded, then go schedule a free strategy session with us and let's talk. Okay, launchpeer.com/I2F. Again, if you guys have other questions I couldn't get to today, then post them in the chat. One of our team members will write you back, or schedule a call. It's free. I mean, might as well take us up on it, right? I mean, I don't know how long we're going to keep doing these free strategy sessions, okay? But while they're here, take advantage of it. All we're here to do is help you guys. That's all we want to do. Okay, if you don't want to join the program after the call, at least you got some good advice from it. At least you got to talk to a member of our team and just feel us out. Okay, but it's free, so you might as well take advantage of it. All I want you guys to do is take action. Do something. I sat on my startup ideas for way too long. Most of our customers sit on their startup ideas for way too long. Okay, don't think that you don't deserve this or that you're not the right person to do it. You are. You can. Okay, I've seen I showed you some examples earlier, right? Anyone can raise funding. I promise you, you can. You just need the right people around you and to do it, the right steps you need to take in order to do it, and we can give you guys that stuff. All right. So anyway, go to launchpeer.com/I2F, and I'll talk to you guys then.